How's it going, everyone? My name's Lee. I'm here with Duranglers, Flies and Supplies in historic downtown Durango, Colorado. And today we're going to talk a little bit about scientific angler fly lines. More specifically about our top 3 selling tapers here in the shop, and then we're going to touch a little bit on a few of the different families of scientific angler fly lines. So these are all going to be, freshwater lines. We are in Colorado, primarily trout fishing, so these are primarily, trout lines. Let's first start with the MPX. So the MPX is a oversized line. It's a little bit heavier than your standard line. It's got a short progressive head, so it turns over streamers, big dry flies, heavy nymph rigs very well. Like I said, it's a half size heavy, so if you buy that in a 5 weight, it's really going to be, kind of in between a 5 and a 6 weight. I would, want to pair this with a faster action rod, something like the Sage X, the Scott Centric, the G Loomis NRX, or the Orvis H3 in the D. So that's the Helios 3D for distance. Let's also talk a little bit about the Trout line, Scientific Angler Trout line. This is a true 2 AFTA standards line weight, meaning that at a 5 weight, it's 140 grains. Progressing in the way that works is, at a 1 weight line, you're at 60 grain weight. 2 weight is 80, so on and so forth, until you get down to a 6 weight, which is 160, and then it starts going up a little bit more, 25 grain weight per line. For those who don't know, the grain weight is just basically the actual weight of the line measured in the first 30 feet of the head of the line. So that's what you get. This is your standard line. It has a long head, which, turns over dry flies very accurately and delicately. If you're looking to throw streamers, to throw heavy nymph rigs, the bigger like chubbies or salmon flies or things, this might not be the line for you. If you are looking to just throw, caddis, mayfly, smaller stoneflies, that kind of stuff, midges, this is a great line. Personally, this is my favorite dry fly line. I like to fish a lot of dry flies. Like I said, if I'm going over to the Piedra or the Rio Grande and you're throwing big salmon flies, then you might want something like this MPX or this next line we're about to talk about, which we'll lead right into. This is the Infinity line. So this is Scientific Angler's kind of, all-around taper. While the MPX is also what they call an all-around taper, I think the Infinity shines in some places where the MPX does not. More specifically, it is a, oversized line, just like the MPX is, so it's a little bit heavier than the standard, trout line. But it's got a longer head. So what that does, it's not going to turn over those big, heavy bugs as well as this MPX will, but it's going to throw a dry fly, a smaller dry fly where you need to be a little more delicate, better than that MPX will. It's great for nymphing. It's great for, lighter streamers. It'll throw a big streamer. It might be a little ugly, but, at the same time, you probably don't really need a beautiful cast when you're throwing a big chunky streamer to the bank and just ripping it back to you as fast as you can. So that's kind of, those 3 lines, the top 3 lines that we sell here in the shop at least. And then let's move on kind of talk about the families of lines. So as you'll see right here, this MPX, this is a Mastery series. This is kind of their, all-around flagship line family. Comes in 16 different tapers. All of these, the Infinity and the Trout and obviously the MPX, all come, in the Mastery family. You also have lines like the ART, the all-around taper, the SBT, the short belly taper. You've got the Bass Bug line, which is great if you're throwing big hair bugs and stuff. It's a wide family of lines, and you're pretty much guaranteed to find the type of line you're looking for within the Mastery family of lines. It is very slick line. It's a very durable line. It's going to last you a long time. Kind of hard to beat. Before I move on and talk about the Amplitudes, I just want to say there is, a less expensive family of line known as the Frequency line. Those are great for people just getting into fly fishing. You don't want to spend the money on a bunch of, I know it can be intimidating when you move up to something like, this line is $140. The Frequency's coming in $30, $40, in that price range. Great lines for what they are. if you're serious about fly fishing, if it's something you do often, or if you're guiding or something like that, I would say go ahead and get the mastery. You're gonna, that extra money you're gonna spend, you're going to get that money back with just a better line, longer lasting line, better casting line. So let's move on from that. Next, I'll go with the Amplitude with AST Slickness Smooth. That's the red box here. So what that means, this is going to be the infinity taper, same taper of line that you get in the Mastery or the Amplitude texture, with just the black box. What it is, it's smooth. So it's not textured like the black one is. We'll explain that a little bit more when I talk about that one. But the AST, what that is a proprietary slickness technology that they build around the core of the line. And as your line deteriorates, it actually travels out from the core to the surface of the line, basically keeping that line slick, just as slick as it were to come out of the box for the entire life of that line. This point will come where, yeah, that line's, beat to hell. You don't want to fish it anymore, but it's going to maintain its slickness for the entirety that you'll have it just, as slick as it is when it's coming out of this box. So difference between this one and this one, black box, it's got that same AST slickness technology around the core, but it is textured, which means, kind of like a golf ball, it's dimpled. It's got two different sections on the head. It's got what's called a floating texture. So it's almost like kind of like honeycomb texture. And it just helps that line float high. A lot of people, you'll notice once you start, your line ages a little bit, wears down a little bit, the tip will start to sink, which, for dry fly fishing, that puts a sag in your line. It's not ideal. For nymphing, it's going to, it's probably doesn't affect it as much as throwing dry flies, but still, you don't really want your tip sinking. I guess if you're fishing streamers, hey, that just gets them down a little quicker. But, at that point, just buy a sink tip line. So that texturing is going to help that fly line just ride high in the water, float in the surface of the water forever, and then it's also got a shooting texture along the, running line part of the line and the back of the head. What that is looks basically like the dimples on a golf ball, and it kind of helps it just shoot through the air. It catches that air and, glides through the air very, very easily. One thing I will say about the textured line is, when you're dealing with heavier lines, 6 weights, 7 weights, 8 weights, not so much in trout, but if you're fishing bass or pike, or carp or things like that in freshwater, certainly any textured line in saltwater under any applications, you'll want to get finger guards. One of the best ones I found, just these little buff stripping guards. That textured line can, if you get a hard fighting, hard running fish and you're holding your line in that hand, it can cut you. It's happened to me a couple times, not a serious issue, but like I said, if you're using a textured line and you're going after some more harder fighting quarry, so pike, bass, carp here in our part of the state, bonefish, giant trevally, redfish, saltwater, snook, those kind of species, pays to get you a little stripping guard. These are like $9, and it could save your day. Not that it's gonna cut into you where you probably won't need stitches or anything, but it'll probably make fishing uncomfortable for the rest of the day. So yeah, that kind of just, basic information touching on our scientific angler fly lines here. We'll probably make a couple other videos dealing with sinking lines and things like that and going over some Rio lines. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and you guys have a good one. Bye. Like this way? Oh, almost.
Oh, that's like half.
So that's 2 half points as a whole. Oh!